Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Business Spotlight. Today, I'm here with Aishling Muller, and she is the leader of Spiritual Seeker Studio. She's a visual artist and a holistic therapist. Hello, Aishling. Thank you for coming. It's so nice to see you here.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for having me on. It's really nice to come and chat to you today.
Definitely. I'm really very excited about your work and how you are helping to support people who are going through their spiritual awakening process. Can you explain a little bit about yourself, maybe, and your background and how you got to this point?
Yeah, sure. I think for me personally, I think I experienced a bit of a mucky awakening back quite some years ago, and it was something where my physical body kind of took the toll, and because I have a very stubborn mind, so I was walking down this path, and I kept walking it no matter how much my instincts and my gut was telling me to stop. And actually, what happened was I was traveling the world at the time. I had absolutely no intentions to come back to Ireland, and my body just kind of really rigidly froze up, and I basically came back home to Ireland not knowing whether I needed back surgery or not.
Oh, God.
And well, I still don't know exactly what happened there, whether the doctor was just trying to spin me a yarn because he wanted some extra money, or whether there was actually something visible on the chart. I still don't know that for sure. But personally, I was in that place of I did not know whether I needed the surgery or not, or what was going on. So everything, I have been planning on. I'm an artist as well, so I have been planning on living a life where I was working with my photography and also traveling. So all of a sudden that was being whipped out from underneath me and everything changed. And then you fast forward a little bit of a while, I got a second opinion that the surgery wasn't necessary. And then I also started to come into contact with, I guess, a lot of different people who were working within the spiritual fields, but they were more coming in as a circle of friends around me, and like a new group, a new tribe gathering around me. And really I was really fortunate because they were very wise and had a lot of knowledge that they could share with me, and help me through the process because I didn't quite understand what was happening. And so then, yeah, it was 3 years of a very serious period of reflection. A relationship broke down, and my life completely shifted and changed. And like in an arts perspective, I was concentrating on documentary photography. So at this time also, I suppose it's not unnatural that my arts practice also shifted at this point to shifting from documenting the external world to actually documenting my internal and this internal journey that I was on. And that's where I'm at in my arts practice these days. It's about bringing that inner journey in an audiovisual or contemporary arts context to people and visitors who come in to see the exhibitions and the work that I do. So it's about trying to tap their subconscious with this documentation of the structure of the journey, let's say, that we're all on, because I do feel we're all on the same journey. And that it's like so our details and our stories are very different, but the actual process we go through is the same. So to bring that to an audience in an audiovisual or sometimes even sculptural participatory works, it goes all over the place.
Oh,
But
wow.
that's essentially what I do, yeah.
Oh, wow. So basically, then are you stirring people's emotions and their feelings and helping them to kind of find themselves, really?
Yeah, I mean, in the last show, this is probably a really good way to describe it. In the last show, I had one of the pictures you can see in the background there, and there was three images, and I have this black character and this white character, self-portraits, and one of them is the conscious mind, and the other is the subconscious mind. But in the middle, hold on, I'll just turn it a little bit. In the middle there, you can see the three hanging together on the back wall. In the middle is a little mirror, which is supposed to be the ego, and each of the pieces has poetry. So they're actually, when people are engaging with the work, and they're looking at ego, they find themselves looking at themselves, so they immediately reflect that back on themselves and their own journey. And there's poetry actually written on the pieces also, which also then stimulates and brings them to this place of understanding and recognizing that this is something relating to the journey that they themselves find themselves on.
Wow. So this is a lot of work and a lot of outpouring of your experience and how you've kind of taken yourself from one step to the next within this, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost like I allow myself to experience it. Like I'm, because that was all about water and emotions. And I found myself at that time in my life, I decided I was going to give myself like a year and a half to experience this set part of my own journey really fully. And so what I did was, or it's not that I was consciously doing it, it's almost like I gave myself permission to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore then my life just unfolded in that way that it happened. And so I found that I was taking a lot of blocks and kind of emotional armor that I had put up around myself. I started to take that down. My current partner came into my life at this time as well. So I really felt like I was opening a lot of doors and removing a lot of those bricks from those walls that had been put up, or that I had put up around myself as a protection mechanism. And so it really allows me to go into that space. And then once I feel like I have understood what that space is, then I try to put the documentary process on it, and to explain that then to other people so they can understand it also, you know. So the next stage is grounding, and I found myself recently moved to Sweden in the last year, and back with the trees, and back just really connected to nature, and actually feeling more grounded than ever in myself at the moment as well. So I'm not quite sure when that work is going to come together, but it's coming.
Well, and that's where I've been lately too. Like grounding has been like a huge theme for me in my own spiritual journey, especially in this last year. So, and do you feel like these themes are kind of global? Um, that you know how sometimes when you read something that's channeled from the collective consciousness or something like that, it's so fitting for everybody. Like we were talking right before the interview, and you said a lot of people this year are experiencing shifts that are really bringing them back into themselves and to where they really need to go. Do you feel like these themes are kind of universal, and that what you're doing is taking a collective theme and then giving people access to that?
I think just from the conversations I've had with other people who are spiritually minded, like I do come into contact with a lot of people who are kind of already walking this path with the work, not my personal artwork, but the work that I do. So I have had a lot of conversations, and I do know that a lot of people who are already quite stepped into this awakening process, or quite the way through their journey, like been on it maybe 5, 10, 15 years or more, that a lot of them are finding that this grounding is happening for them very, very, very significantly at the moment. And I do also know that there's a huge astrological event that's happening in January 2020, which is all about this stepping out fully into our power. From what I understand of it, I'm not so big on astrology, but from what I understand about it is that that is what it's all about. Is everybody kind of making a move and stepping out further into that version of who we're supposed to be, and who we're supposed to become.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So does this tie in with your Awakened What to Do Next group that you're going to be starting up?
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of launching an online training program, and that is going to be kicking off in January 2020. Now, again, it's kind of coincidental that it has happened that way, but obviously not that coincidental, really. Yeah, but it's actually a great time to get started with it, I think, because what I am teaching, or what I offer with people who work with me is about kind of understanding that journey. You know, a lot of people have gone through this process of awakening, and we find ourselves training and training and training and training, and this modality, that modality, this energy healing, that. And it's like, I think nobody is kind of showing us the framework, or not the parameters of this experience that we're on. You know, we've had this awakening process, but nobody is actually breaking down the parameters of how we navigate it, of how we continue to grow, of what we need to concentrate on to continue our self-development, our spiritual development, to continue developing further and growing and expanding further, you know, because we awaken, and that is in a period of very rapid expansion. So our body kind of, everything gets thrown up in the air and needs to shift and settle, because our energy is just having this huge surge, which changes and pushes us into new spaces in our life in whatever form that is. But nobody then actually kind of provides a system, or at least not that many that I found anyway, provide this system or framework for people to what they can do next or how they can continue, and that's what I'm offering in the Awakened What to Do Next. It's basically a culmination of everything that I have learned while I've been on my own journey, and also then when I've been journeying with my creativity, because I find creativity and spirituality very connected. And I think once we understand what's happening to us, what has happened to us in the expansion and the initial awakening period, we can then begin to take responsibility and control of how we want that to lead us into the future, and how and what actions we might need to take to get us to be that person, or to step out as that person who we are very obviously becoming.
Right. And is that kind of the reason that you put together the support group, like the Spiritual Seekers Studio, so that when people are going through this process, that they have, because for me, I feel like I get the expansion and then I have to do something with it. I have to figure out how to assimilate that in my life, and then another expansion, and then another assimilation period. And so, but like you said, doing that on your own, it just is really kind of haphazard and scattered, and really just like intuitively led. So
absolutely. I think also, I think as people, we tend to, when we're going through the initial awakening process, like we tend to then see us as different from the rest. We tend to see, and that society doesn't fit and everything is wrong, and you can get sucked into that whole conspiracy mode for a while as well. I know I was certainly there for a while, and then you come out the other end of that, and you realize that it's still an inside job. So if you're feeling isolated, it's because you on your inside are feeling isolated, and you are not feeling worthy of stepping out into your community or your space as who you are, because you're afraid of judgment, or you're afraid of whatever's going to come up against you. You're afraid to show and reveal and remove that mask and show yourself for who you are or who you're becoming. And I think that is something that separates us from the society and everything. And I think we're really, actually, people like us are really needed these days. Our sensitivities are needed, our emotional connection and compassion is needed. We're needed, so we need to, well, personally, I feel we need to step out a little bit more and stop hiding and pretending that we're somebody else interested in other things.
That's a really good way of saying it and expressing it, because right now, yeah, we are, I've been feeling it too, that we're at the precipice of this giant shift as a society. And if we still try and, like you said, if we aren't fully expressing ourselves, if we're not being open about who we are and what we're about, then we're actually kind of holding ourselves back and holding society back from turning the corner.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, creativity also has a huge part to play in all of this, because I mean, yes, I'm an artist, but I see creativity as something so much more than that. And it's not just something that is for artists. It is something that is, everybody has it. And in fact, it's every time you make a decision, a choice about anything, you are being creative. You are applying a creative muscle or action, and most people don't realize this, and we always do have a choice of how we're going to react to something, and that is always a creative choice. And I think the more that we begin, and also with creativity, it's like we need to believe that something is possible. So first we need to imagine something as possible, and if we can't imagine something as possible, then for us in our sphere it's never going to be possible.
Right.
So that's also where creativity is huge, in that keeping us shifting and growing and widening all the time, and just really stepping out.
Right. Well, and bringing creativity in the mix, and I'll put a link to your TED Talk in the note for the interview as well. But actually, this kind of gives me goosebumps and everything to think about it, because if we have enough people who are creating and envisioning a different way of living that's more in line with the spiritual self that we are, then from that vision, we can create a society that matches it. But if we don't have the strength or the nerve to create that vision, or if we keep it to ourselves and we think, oh no, that's not possible, there's not enough people who can support this or whatever. I guess the sun is agreeing with me here. So then, you know, getting it out in the open and connecting with other people who have a similar vision to us is actually essential in creating this in the long run.
Absolutely. And that's what's so wonderful about the Spiritual Seeker Studio. You know, we have people in there from all around the world. And like there's a couple of hundred people in there now, or 150 or whatever it is. But it feels like it's kind of like a bit of an extension of my own family also, because over 100 of those people are people that I've personally met over the years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I think it's wonderful because I've met so many incredible people. But the reason that I've been able to meet so many incredible people is because I don't hide who I am. Is because I am open. This is who I am. This is what I'm into. These are the kind of things I enjoy talking about, and these are the kind of things that I believe. And being so open and letting that flag fly has really brought me into contact with so many people. And as a result, then my when you're working on a chakra level, then my throat chakra and my expression of self and standing in my truth and expressing my truth is very strong, which means then that my vibration is then amplified, and matching my inner vibration and my outer reality then match better, because I'm actually expressing that out in a very authentic manner. Whereas if I was to close that off and pretend that I was someone else and just do something else, or kind of like not reveal that side of myself, then I would be suppressing an aspect of myself. And being a Leo monkey artist, like, it's not something that I would be very happy doing. You know, I would feel actually quite miserable if I was hiding some part of myself, because there's definitely some aspect of being an artist of where you're bearing yourself, you're bearing your soul, you're showing yourself to others. And that is a big part of what that is. But I feel like that I have been doing this long enough. I have been expressing myself in this manner long enough that now the only people who surround me are my kind of people. So I very rarely get in those situations where I'm sitting there and going, oh, I have nothing to talk to these people about, or, oh, I can't really say what I think, or that doesn't come into it anymore for me.
Well, and you've been recently opening your home, haven't you? Like inviting people over to tea, and to like, how awesome is that to just have a bunch of people who are interested in spirituality and interested in opening up and interested in that journey. How has that worked out for you?
Yeah, I've just done it twice so far, and actually another one is happening this week on Wednesday. So yeah, it's like the first time there was one lady that I had met once before, and then she brought another friend, and then the second time it was another young lady from the town here, and another gentleman also who were studying shamanism. So it's really interesting because, well, personally for me, because we're living in a remote space, we're on the edge of a lake here in the middle of the woods, and I don't really go into town that much because I don't really have a lot to do with that kind of the regular everyday scene. If I'm in a town, I just feel tired and drained. So I needed to find my tribe here, because we've only been living here for like 5 or 6 months. And so I really felt like the only way that I was going to do that was by putting this open call out and just inviting people around to see what happened. And to be honest, it's been a wonderful experience so far. It's been really positive, nice conversations, nice chats, and getting to know people. And some of the people are now in the Spiritual Seeker Studio. They're also joining me for Sound Bath events, which I'm also hosting once a month at home. So and also it's just really nice to see them embrace it so much also. It's like that, I really feel like there's a need for it, like, and the more people I talk to, the more people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to come the next time. So it really seems like there's a lot of people who are searching for this sense of community, this sense of authentic expression, because that's all we're doing. We're having a cup of tea and a chat, you know, like, but a really raw, honest chat with strangers who seem like they're friends. You know, it's like it seems like you know them a long time, you know.
Right. So you come into the tea room not at that, like, we're just going to have light talk. You come into it like, let's bare our souls and get to know each other, and
Absolutely.
yeah. And that in and of itself is a new way of interacting with people, don't you think? Because it's real and raw, and, you know, like, really, let's get to know each other kind of thing.
Yeah, I think though, I mean, For me though, I've always been like that, and I've always known that I'm like that. So for me, it's not that new or whatever. It's just the way I've always been, and I can't help it. I can't be anyone else. So it's I always said that along the way as well, because after a while you begin to realize my communications with people tended to be very raw and organic and authentic, and I seem to always get behind the mask, and I seem to always connect to people um more on a one-on-one level. I was sometimes not very good with groups of people, and sometimes a bit deer in the headlights when I was in large crowds, and maybe still am a little bit, but that's getting less also. um but definitely, I mean, I remember one particular occasion. I was in New York for a time, and I remember going to some exhibition opening or something, and there was this gentleman there, and I didn't even get his name, but I must have spoke with him for about 3 hours, and
Oh, wow.
like about the in-depth about life, and the meaning of life, and what was happening in both our lives and everything. And it was just that one brief interaction. And but it's just something that will stay with me all the time. It's like you meet these people, you don't even need to know their name, and you can have these super intense conversations that are really, each person goes away a little bit altered after, because your energies have really mixed and merged and mingled during it. Even a person on a plane or a bus, or whatever situation you find yourself in.
Right. So, and that's beautiful too, seeing that, that there are people out there who are interested in planting seeds as they go along through life. And it's just like, well, I might not know your name. We might not ever interact ever again, but I want you to leave this experience better than you came into it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a conscious. I wouldn't say it's a conscious decision like that. It's just kind of one of those "it just happens" kind of thing. I think maybe that's on a very subtle energetic level. I mean, the way we came into contact first as well was just because a random 20-minute conversation.
Right, right. And that's true. But yeah, and that's how it happens, though. And perhaps though, because you have set the intention. And so you've shifted your life and you've pivoted everything, and you've said, no, this way of interacting just doesn't suit me anymore, and I don't intend to interact with people. And I consciously ask the universe basically to bring people to me who are on the same wavelength and level as I am. Or
Mm. Yeah. I think very much so, that because I'm so open in my expression and kind of honest with who I am myself, it's just because I put that out there, it naturally just comes back, because it's like it's picked up upon by others, and it's just just an unspoken understanding, or an energetic something that connects the two.
right. Well, is it the Schumann's Renaissance? I don't think that's the right word, but where if you come into like the pendulums that swing, and if they're
Yeah.
swinging at different
Entrainment.
paces,
Yeah.
when so it's kind of like that same theory, but in communicating with other people and helping them, and then in turn causing a ripple effect. Or
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah.
wow, cool. So, and that's I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of holistic practitioners and spiritual people really would love to see, and perhaps they've just never thought to articulate it in that way.
Mm. I think, there's so many stresses on people as well, though. There's like with the work, and then families and schools and children, and everything in the mortgage, and paying the bills and everything. At the end of the day, it's a real struggle out there for people at the moment. And I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've been able to follow my own path for the majority of my life, and I've always done it. So I've been extremely fortunate in that. But I know for very, very many people, it's very difficult to find the time and space even to dedicate to themselves, to allow themselves to give themselves time and space to go in further, to develop, to grow, to question, to seek out information, to seek out new people and situations where they can continue to grow.
Right. But also with Facebook and with the internet and with Zoom and all these things, it's kind of bridging the gap, I feel like, so that whereas before we might not have even had access to any kind of opinion or influence outside of our village,
Yeah.
even, then now you and I, who would never meet probably, in passing, we have the opportunity to talk with one another and to learn from each other.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's wonderful. Like the internet does really bring that to a new space. The thing that with the digital technology, you just have to be careful to use it in the correct way, because I find it drains as well. But to use it in such a manner is amazing, and I think there is a real move on towards that at the moment, and you see more and more communities appearing and growing and just coming into being where people can connect in that space. And I feel as well, exactly, like there was one member who joined the community this morning, and she basically was saying that she's in a small community, and she doesn't feel like there's anybody around her where she can access information. So this now, hopefully, by joining us in the group, she can hopefully then find and connect with many other people that she can then speak about, and just to nurture that aspect of herself that is not getting nurtured from the people around her in the community.
Right. And then perhaps by her coming into contact with you, then she's going to be able to live in her own light. And then she might even actually come into contact with people in her community that have been hiding.
Absolutely. Do you know what I find? And this is the super most interesting thing, that once one person opens up that conversation in a group of people who you never thought would be in
Uh-oh.
people, there's always two people who are going to be like agree with you, or just wanting to talk about. And it's really, it's because it just requires one person to do it. When I was living in Iceland, actually, I used to have this friend of mine. She's a medium, and she used to come around to my place, and as soon as she get in the door, she'd be like, "Oh God, good, Aishling, now I can just be myself." And I was just like, okay, but like she's very much herself, and she's very openly a medium, but still for some reason it was like, "Oh, you're the only one I can talk to about this stuff. You're the only one, I can only say this in here."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just interesting. And people say that to me over and over and over again, that they feel like, and I don't know what it is, but that they feel like they can express that aspect of themselves around me. I tend not to judge, I allow people to, I've heard all sorts of stuff, dragons and elves, and living in Iceland, you can't not get into the whole elf story, and the people are very, very connected to the elves there. So
Oh, wow.
it's yeah, it's super interesting also. They even reroute roads and stuff because they don't want to move stones and everything. So it really filters into the society. And they're very open, energetic, spiritual people as well. So it's quite interesting there, that space.
Well, you said when you were there, like life just kind of unfolded for you. You would
Yeah.
go to the bus stop, and then all of a sudden synchronicity would take over, and you would end up doing something completely cool for the rest of the day, right?
Yeah, no, Iceland is one of those places, like it has a good magic and a bad magic though. So it's kind of like, I would go home back and forth to Ireland quite a lot. And I think once or twice I ended up in the bad magic when I came back, and weird bad things would happen. But most of the time, you just, it's like you get there and you can feel it. The energy is very high vibration, and it just takes you and picks you up and just puts you somewhere. It just does that. It just literally picks you up and puts you somewhere. And I think a lot of people, I've said this to a lot of people that I know who have lived there or are still living there, and they all agree with me that there is something very magic about anything is possible there. I don't know, maybe because it's small, I don't know. It's just things are possible.
Well, and I'm all like, okay, pack up, I'm there. So seriously. Do you feel though that sometimes when you got into the darker side of things, it was necessary for your spiritual growth or for
I
you to
think,
learn something?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can't always be on an up cycle, It's like we have to also acknowledge that there are times where we're going to be sifting through that heavy stuff, And I think that's also something that people you know, people go through their awakening process and they think, that's it, I'm done, you know, everything is cleared out and now I'm going to go and help everybody else with these holistic modalities that I've learned. But it's a lifelong lesson, you know, and there's going to be ups and downs. You know, I like to see it like a wave. And so you go up to the top of the wave and everything will flow, and it seems like the universe is just putting the synchronicities and everything in place for you. But then eventually you're going to come down again, and you're going to go into the next layer that you're moving through, and then you're going to plateau with that in the bottom and then start to move up again. I think that's quite natural, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that's kind of the thing that throws people off of their spiritual path a lot of times is understanding, like for me, it's like if you have the 2D spiral where you just keep meeting the same lesson and you don't elevate yourself from that lesson, so you stay on that same plane with the lesson, or else then you meet it again at the next level, and then eventually, hopefully, it's not a trigger anymore, or it's not even a conscious process. You're just like, oh, okay, I'm over this. There is no thought about going backwards again, or meeting it at the same level again.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's because our perspective is shifting and changing, you know. And as we're growing, we're changing how we see things, and we're seeing it quicker. We're going, oh, there's that thing again before it even gets there, you know. So it's like our awareness shifts, and then once we get to that place, it's like, you know, the what is it? It's not in AA, but it's in one of those addiction that awareness is part of the, like the awareness is the biggest part of it.
I
And to
think that's
become
the first
aware of
step. Yeah, it is admitting you have a problem is the first step. Sorry, I have a lot of AA people in my realm.
yeah, exactly. But that's exactly it. Like, so as soon as we become aware that something is happening, we have so much more control and ability. Because if we don't understand or see it or notice that it's happening, how can we ever hope to change it? Because we haven't recognized it as something that needs to be changed, you know?
Right. Or admitted to it.
Yeah.
You know, and but a lot of times too, I think that it's important to see that spirituality doesn't require you to be at a high vibe level for you to jump on the elevator, so to speak. It's going to meet you where you're at, no matter if, and I think that's kind of one of the things that unfortunately was kind of sown through the spiritual community for a while, was that you had to be somehow perfect.
Mm.
And that you could never have a bad day or a bad period or a bad whatever and still be spiritual or be able to share your spirituality with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is really coming to light at the moment, actually. And this must be as well coming up to this 2020 phase, you know, all of this, you know, that spirituality is all love and light and happiness and gorgeous, fluffy, whatever, you know, it's this spiritual bypassing and this thinking that we don't need to face into that, into our issues, into our shadow, into our unconscious, and that we don't need to address and shift those things that we've been carrying since we were small or past lives or whatever, you know, and feeling that we just have to be in a happy place. That's not life, you know.
Right.
We all have baggage, you know, that we need to shift, change, or come to terms with, forgive, move on, let go, all of those things.
Right. And so having those deep, open conversations with people isn't suggesting that it all is like, oh yeah, I saw that angel, whatever. And it's like really getting into the core of what they've been processing and perhaps how they've used their own journey or what they've discovered that can help them and perhaps help you. Because a lot of times I've noticed when I'm working with other people, what comes up is exactly what I need in the moment too.
I think when you're working with other people, and you work energetically as well, do you? Or you work with birds, or yeah. But I think when you're working with other people, you know, there is an exchange that's happening there, an energetic exchange. They're giving you something and you're giving them something to aid them on their journey. Because at the end of the day, it's not you that are fixing me, it's me that's fixing me, but you are providing me a bit of guidance or support around that, or a little bit of energetic push to move through some other negative stuff or whatever is blocking. You may help to resolve a block or something, because you provide, say, some information or some clues to my energy, which can then release or let go or move me on into another space. And I think that's also something that is something that people need to watch out for, is people claiming to be able to fix people because You know, this journey is so personal, this journey is so unique, and only the individual themselves can figure out. You know, I had a certain childhood, I grew up in a certain background in a certain country, and I experienced certain things before I was 7 or in my early formative years, and that's completely different to everybody else. So therefore my puzzle and my energetic makeup and structure, my blocks, my puzzle pieces are very different, you know. So while yes, there is an overall structure, we're all on a journey, we're all growing and expanding and becoming more of who we are. It is about us figuring out and taking responsibility for our own puzzle pieces, and not handing that away to anybody else, and realizing that we are the only ones who can fix it. We are the only ones who have the keys, and anybody else who tries to tell us that they have the keys is somebody that we should avoid, probably, you know.
Right, right. Well, and that's kind of in the work that I've been doing, because I do tarot readings as well, and a lot of people just want to hand their issues to me and say, give
Yes.
me the solution, resolve this issue for me. And I'm just like, wow, it doesn't work that way. let's look at this from a different perspective, and let's give you the responsibility instead of me taking it on. Because yeah, and unfortunately there are far too many people out there who are willing to take advantage of people, string them along years, you know, thousands of dollars in a few years, and then everybody gets hurt in the long run, especially the spiritual community, because there are
Absolutely.
people out there who are, yeah, using the guise of healing
Mm.
to just steal from other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now I find as well, like I'm, and I think, you know, I've been doing this work now for a very long time, both with my creativity working. I started off doing workshops with people, leading people to discover their authentic expression. And so I would teach them a skill like photography or video, and then they would bring their own content and their own story and their own narrative to that. And I just gave them the skills of what they could do, or the framework of what they could build with that. And I like to take that same approach with the spiritual work and these online training programs, and this in Awakened What to Do Next also, because it's like about, I don't want to people to think that I can fix them, because they are bringing their content to the table, and I am giving them exercises which can be applied in many different phases and stages, practical exercises, which then, as they go on the journey of experiencing those exercises themselves, they will learn about their own inner journey and their own experience. So every person who does the exercise experiences something different, because they're all tapping into that authentic place inside of themselves and bringing their own content, their own story, their own history, their own past to the table, and just applying those rules of those exercises or the parameters around it, so they can then kind of gain more clarity or understand in a much clearer way what is going on in their lives, you know. It's
Right.
not about going fix this, and this, and then you need to fix that, and then you need to fix that, and then you need to fix that, because I mean that's not how it works at all. Like you said, like it's just, yeah.
Right. So each person has their own process, and you kind of give them a framework to kind of work within,
Yeah.
but then the timeline and the content, as you said, is their own.
Yeah, and it's also about realizing that they have their own process and learning what that process is and identifying that process, because we all process out in a different way. We all like approach different situations or problems in our lives in a different way. Some of us are like, say, I'm more kind of artistic, artsy fartsy or whatever, so I would tend to push my stuff through my creative artworks. That's the way that I tend to process energy out of myself. And other people might not do that at all. They might actually just go to meditation classes, or so you have to, it's about also discovering and learning, yes, that one fits with me, that matches the person who I am, I can do that one, it feels comfortable, that one doesn't, you know. And also with boundaries with people, also learning to understand what's a good boundary, what's a comfortable boundary, when are you being taken advantage of. And obviously that's different for me as it is for you, as it is for the next person. So everybody must come at their own level. And you mentioned this earlier, actually, about the different, it's not about reaching or striving for enlightenment and striving for this big, you know, it's like, I think that's another huge misconception, because it is like this wave that goes up and down. And we're just trying to be present here in the now. And I think as long as we're being present here in the now, that's what it's about. And whatever ways or techniques or practices that we need to find to do that, to bring us into those spaces, those present spaces, are what we need to do, and whatever they are for each of us individually.
Right, right. Is that going to be what you're covering in your webinar that's coming up in December? Like,
yeah, I've got a masterclass coming up in December. It's on the 11th and 12th of December. It's called Elevate, and it's about discovering the 7 essential steps to support you on your inner journey. And so this is, again, it's just basically outlining the steps that you need to go to, or the shifts that you need to make, or the approaches you need to take to allow yourself to understand your journey in a clearer way, and allow yourself to, it's like giving you a framework from which you can then, like I can give you one of them. Being authentic is one of them. So authentic expression. So when you express yourself authentically, you're showing up as yourself, which means that people are going to respond to you in a different manner, which means you're going to get more confident, and there's a whole knock-on effect of that. I don't want to go into some of the rest of them, but they're all kind of different aspects with which you can approach your life, or things you have to remain open to. And it just makes it much easier, much smoother, and just so you can basically figure out what level of each of these things is comfortable for you, okay, and how much you're willing to go down one approach, or if you're willing to try this approach, or being open to this aspect of how you approach your journey from now on, and how that can shift and change, and just really allow yourself to be more comfortable and to find and know your self-worth, I think. Yeah.
So that's a big one too, because I mean, all of these little things that you're injecting into the conversation, yeah, are so important. Self-worth, knowing that it's not going to be this big, bold, heaven opens up and all the angels flow down on you, and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's going to be those, those moments when you connect really, mm-hmm, with yourself, mm-hmm, and with your authenticity, and with other people from that authentic perspective.
But there are certain things, obviously, which we have to, or certain behaviors we have to adopt to, or actions we need to take to allow ourselves to access this space in an easier way, or in a more aligned way with ourselves, in a more authentic way with ourselves. And once we allow ourselves that approach, everything else becomes much easier, because you've understood that there are that if you behave in a certain manner, that it's not as dramatic as it could seem, that if someone didn't let you know these things or tell you these things. It's basically everything I had to learn the hard way. Or what we all have to learn the hard way. Many people will already, as well, maybe the words haven't been put on it for them, but many people will also resonate or connect with a lot of what I'm going to say as well, because it's a natural process that we all go through. But it's to have it all there in one digestible format is pretty handy. I wish I would have had it myself, because I kind of did. I had all these wonderful people around me, but to break it down in a way that is really understandable for people, so they can really figure out how they're going to navigate themselves as they continue, because the journey doesn't end. We awaken. That's not just it. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of everything else that is to come, and how deep we're going to take it. And yeah.
Well, and like you said, though, having the support and having guidance and having somebody who's walked the path and kind of tripped over the obstacles, and and then you have that, not only that support, but that forewarning, and that, oh, if you run into this, then you could try this or that or the other thing.
Yeah, there's also danger in that though as well, because you don't want to, we all are experienced. I had certain hardships because I was supposed to learn those things. Right. And if I remove those hardships for other people, then they don't learn those things. Right. So it's also about, this is where it's very tricky. And this is, I think, what stopped me from doing this for such a long time, because you're just so aware that this is very delicate territory inside of people. You know, this is very intimate. It's very personal. It's so deeply personal and so tender and delicate. And so really it's about just saying that you have to give it in such a way that it's not too instructional, I think.
Right.
If that makes sense, or not too, like, that it's open enough for interpretation, but also that it's not so narrow that it's a do A, do B, do C, then D, because it's not like that, because whatever order you're going to experience all of these things is going to come in a different manner for everybody, you know. And when you need to apply a certain percentage of this and a certain percentage of this is different for everybody.
Right.
So you can't give a one situation fits all to anybody, like, but you can provide or give like an understanding of, if you shift your perspective in this way, if you take this approach in general, like to the level that you're comfortable with at this current time of your life, then you're not taking them away from any hardships that they might have to experience to learn the lessons. You're just saying to them, take this as far as you're comfortable taking this right now. Later you may change that, because you're going to shift and grow and develop as you go on. So you may take it further later, but you can only ever take this as far as you're comfortable as taking it now, and how you understand it now. Does that make sense? I think.
Oh yeah, totally. It's just like if even if the lesson is there and it's plainly written out, when you're not ready for it, when you're not there, then you won't hear it and you won't see it. And I've had that happen before in my own life, where just learning something, I just wasn't ready. And so I could not understand it. And then I came back to it 2 years later or something like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how did I not get this?
It was there all along.
Yeah. But at the time it was like looking at a different language, or not being able to fully appreciate it for what it was. So
that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because we were doing some training programs recently, or taking some training programs, not teaching them, myself and my partner. And we always discuss after the weekend, you know, what we experienced, or how we interpreted it, or how we read the weekend, or what lessons or takeaways we had. And it's so funny, because it was like the two of us, like, normally there was a match with every weekend we had done up until that point, but this last one, it was just like there was a total, I don't know, it was like he was like, no, and then the guy who was leading it said this and was talking about this, and he was working on this perspective and dealing with this theme. And I was like, I didn't even hear that. When did that happen? Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, no, it was like we totally had been listening and experiencing on completely different levels, and almost that part of the conversation was actually just not hidden, or was hidden, or just not even heard by the other person.
Right.
We were like, when did that happen? Which part of the weekend did that happen? And I totally didn't get that part, you know?
Right. Oh, wow. So it does happen like that, though. Things do unfold, and a lot of times we have these roads, or these opportunities, or these even advices or guidances, support, that we're just not ready for it in the time. And so we have to get to that space where that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog just came in here and he's like, la, la, la.
I can hear a little pause.
Yeah. But yeah, but it's normal. It's to be anticipated, because it is such an individualized and personal process. And even you living with your partner and being at similar levels and everything, there are times when you, like you said, you're going to have a completely different experience in the same room.
Yeah, absolutely. The wonderful thing though about myself and my partner is like that when he's thinking logical, I'm thinking intuitive. So when he's doing left brain, I'm doing right brain. And then when he's doing right brain, I'm doing left brain. So it's like it's really strange the way it works. And it can be a little bit annoying when we're working on like a creative project idea or something we want to do, because the person who's all flowy and then we could do this and then we could do this and then we could do this, and then the other person just automatically comes in with yeah, but in order to do that we have to and completely kills it. And it's just funny, but because one always has to take the space that's missing.
Right.
It's really interesting. And he works with people who are writing, and he works with people taking people from the subconscious into the conscious space, and I take people from the conscious space into the subconscious space.
Ah, okay.
It's super interesting. Yeah, it's super interesting. We have great conversations in this house.
I can imagine. Because so you intersect kind of in that flow area between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's good that you met each other, though, because it seems like you complement one another in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I've been very lucky. Like, and he also likes to, he offers to carry heavy stones for me when I have to put an exhibition together that needs a whole beach in there. So yeah,
that's always nice too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, if somebody were to say, gosh, sum up, and I hate to say it this way, but so when you're working with people, you're working to give them support so that they can process and kind of evolve in their own way. Is that right?
Yeah, I suppose I want to encourage people that to do that is fine, and that they understand that to be themselves and to express themselves is actually, like, I find this creative expression, authentic expression, is the only freedom that we have. And to encourage people to do that, encourage people and to see them. It's wonderful when you see somebody and it's like a little flower bud and it just suddenly cracks open and just continues to open. And that is just the most rewarding, wonderful experience that there is to see that happen for somebody, and for them to realize that they can achieve things that they never thought they could, that they can be somebody that they never thought they could, and that they can really just not be in fear of what other people think, because they are just truly expressing who they are and being themselves, and finding that space and way that they can express that version of who they are authentically, and also then how they can grow and develop. So to give them space where they can do that in safety, I guess, and to give them the encouragement and also some tools and tricks. Like, I see creativity as a tool. It's a toolbox that you dip into, and everybody has it. Just not everybody knows how to open the damn box yet. So once you open the box, it's all in there, you know. So I guess I help people to open the box, and I mean, if you wanted to sum it up in a very simple way, yeah, I help them. I show them, look, that box is just sitting over there, and all it takes is your hands to lift the lid, and that's it. And then you're off, and you can really then begin to, with this new expansion that you found in yourself through your awakening and everything, that you can now apply your creativity to that, to begin to create the life, the external reality, which is a match and a mirror for that internal reality that you now feel that you are becoming, and to have that shift into the real world and have that become a reality for them.
Right. Well, and I think too, people don't realize how much power they have to actually get into the box and to open the box and to make that their reality. So
Absolutely.
You offering them the guidance and support to be able to say, see, you were able to open it the whole time.
Yeah.
And now look at what you're making for yourself. Isn't this beautiful and wonderful? Kind of
Yeah.
and a little challenging sometimes also, but
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to break this down in a very simple way, I remember I was leading a photography course in a local community in Ireland, in a small local community, in the community hall. And there was a lady that had signed up, and she was in her, I'm not going to say what age she was in case I get it wrong, so somewhere mid-60s, 70s. So she came to the first class, and because I'm a professional photographer, been doing this stuff a long time, I really know what I'm talking about, and I'm very I know about the contemporary scene, I know about the art scene in relation to photography, the history and everything. So I tend to take people in quite deeply when I'm beginning to teach them, because I want to show them the possibilities before I get them to jump in and do something themselves. So I did that in the first class, and then after the first class, she approached me and she's like, "Oh, Aishling, can I have a word?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Look, I really don't think this is for me. You know, I'm not into it like everybody else is into it. And I just don't think my son convinced me to take this. And I really don't think, and I just said to her, I said, look, I said, come back next week. Try it. This is not about, I said, I was just showing you possibilities. I was just showing you the world that's out there. So this isn't anything. Anyway, I don't know what I said to her exactly, but I convinced her to come back. And she stayed until it was finished. And she has a dairy farm, and she took all these photographs of these cows and the milking process and everything, and this whole milking process, from even to the milk on on a glass on the table, or her granddaughter drinking a glass of milk or something. But there was just such a humor, a beautiful humor in the images, which was like, it wasn't like just a stand and click and don't engage in the process of creating the photograph. She let herself go into that process and captured some of her humor in the images, which shone through so incredibly strongly in the images that I was looking at over the period. I think it was a period of 6 weeks, and they had to build a project, and we had an exhibition at the end. It was just, I think her images were definitely my favorite from the bunch, because she had made such a massive shift in herself to allow herself to do that, to allow herself to let her personality come through in the way she was taking photographs. And she really let herself go into it. And I was so proud of her by the end. And really, her images were just so, the humor, there was an honesty and a humor in them that was just so, so beautiful. Like, and that is, I guess, what I want to bring to people, or that is the space that I want to create for people to be in, so they can explore and bring themselves not only to a creative project like a photograph project or an art project, but to their life, to bring that their honest, authentic expression, and bring that forward and have that visible in the way that they lead their life on a daily basis.
And that's beautiful, because our lives are our ultimate creative projects.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. And so that's what we have to connect with. It's been so wonderful.
Absolutely.
Chatting with you. So, and again, Aishling Muller, and you can find her on Facebook in the Spiritual Seekers Studio. And then she will be having a webinar, and I'll put the information on December 11th and 12th. So wonderful again. And everybody, thank you for tuning in. And if you want to see more of Aishling's work, just follow the links below this podcast or webinar or whatever media you
conversation
wherever you see us, there'll be links below. So take care, have a wonderful day, we'll talk soon.